Hello, everyone. Greetings and salutations. We are back for another episode of the Back of the Pack podcast. I'm your host, Kyle Walker. Thank you for joining us here on OKKC Sports. We do appreciate it as always. So, another weekend done. Hopefully, everyone got out there for a race or at least for a long run, some training, whatever your situation might be. Hopefully, you got out there and were able to do something. If you've been listening to the show before, you'll know that I, this weekend, had a half marathon. So, the Liberty Hospital Half Marathon is where I was at this weekend. And I know there were a few other people there who are fans of the show. So I think I owe some folks some t-shirts. If not some t-shirts, definitely some stickers. But we are definitely found at the half marathon. So that makes me really happy. It just kind of shows that this show is actually doing well. It's getting out there for people to hear. And that is always awesome. You can always join us across all the social media platforms. Of course, we're here on Facebook. You can find us on Instagram. Apparently, Instagram is where all the cool kids are these days because we're absolutely blowing up over on the Insta. And you can find us at Back of the Pack Podcast, all one word. And that's where we are on Instagram. We're also on Twitter. I think that's just Backpack Podcast over on Twitter, Facebook, all the good stuff. And then, of course, you can listen to this podcast wherever you like to listen to your podcast on Spotify, iTunes, or anywhere in between. Make sure you give us a like and a comment and a share and a subscribe, all those good things, and away we go. So let's talk this week about a few important dates coming up in the running community. Even if you're just local to Kansas City and local to our running scene here, I do like to kind of talk about the national stuff as well. A lot of people find it fun, interesting. We might touch on a dream race that you've got, or whatever your situation is. If you were able to enter your name into the New York Marathon Lottery, okay, the lottery is now closed. Again, I've done this race. I highly recommend that you do as well. If you didn't make it into this year's lottery, give it a try next year. I did see that on March 30th. On March 30th is when everyone in the lottery is going to find out if they made it or not. So that's a big date coming up. March 30th, this Wednesday, you'll find out if you made the New York Marathon or not. So that's exciting. Best of luck to any of you who entered into the lottery system. Again, I got in 2021, ran the race back in November. Highly recommend it. I was a big fan of the race, big fan of New York City. It had been my first trip there to the Big Apple. Loved it. Look forward to going back. I'm probably going to try and get back into the New York Marathon in, I don't know. I'm thinking maybe 4 years. So I was there for the 50th anniversary, the 50th running. I may be going for 55 would be kind of cool. We'll see. We'll see if that happens or not. The next big date coming up for us runners is on April 18th, the Boston Marathon. So that is always televised. That is at least what I consider to be the biggest and most prestigious race in our country. Boston is legendary. It's probably the toughest race to run. You have to have a qualifying time. If you're not big in the running community, yes, Boston, there is no lottery. There is no open registration. You have to qualify for Boston. And the qualification times, you have to be a very upper tier runner to meet those qualification times. I personally will never meet the qualification time it would take to get into Boston. My best hope of running that race, and I do hope to run that race, my best bet will be through a charity bib, and the lowest amount I've ever seen for a charity bib is $7,500. And so I just need to come up with about $7,500 someday, and I'll have my charity bib to Boston, which is why I probably will not be running Boston anytime soon. But it is number one on my dream list. My goal in life is to get the 6 stars, the Abbott World Marathon Majors, the 6 stars completed. Here in the United States, that's Boston, New York, and Chicago. I have 2 of those 3 with having Chicago and New York. And then the overseas ones, Tokyo, London, and Berlin. I'll be in Berlin in September looking for my 3rd star for the World Marathon Majors. If that's something you're ever curious about, I'd love to talk to you about it. You can also find it. Just do a Google search for Abbott World Marathon Majors and take a look. I don't think I personally know any 6-star finishers. I know some people who have gotten close, but yeah, I definitely hope to finish my running career someday with all 6 stars. So those are the 2 big dates coming up for all of us runners, at least the national dates. So now let's talk about this past weekend. Like I said, I went up and did the Liberty Hospital Half Marathon. This is my 4th time running the race, 5th time that they've had the race. I did not make their inaugural event as I was out due to surgery, but I've always enjoyed this race for the last few times I've ran it. I kind of have a strange relationship with this race. Now, if you don't want to listen to me drone on about it, you can find my after action report on the website on www.backofthepackpodcast.com. I went up and I typed everything I thought about the race and just kind of all of my thoughts and musings. So if you'd rather get this in written form, I don't know why you would, then go ahead and check that out. If not, you can just listen to me talk about it. So this race and I, again, strange relationship. I ran this race first in 2018. So in 2018, it was my first half marathon after having heart surgery. I did not run any half marathons in 2017. I did some 5Ks that year, but I had never gone to the half marathon distance. So in 2018, it was my first half marathon coming back from heart surgery. It's a difficult course. I definitely struggled coming back, but I know that when I finished, I had two friends who were at the finish line waiting for me. That was really helpful. And I was super emotional just coming back from such a bad surgery and being able to finish a half marathon. So Liberty Hospital half marathon will always hold a spot in my heart simply due to that. And then from that end of the spectrum, from the holding this wonderful place in my heart, all the way to the opposite end of the spectrum, the very same race in 2019 was my worst half marathon ever. My worst time, my worst performance, my worst showing was this race back in 2019. Now you can ask yourself, because I ask myself, why? Why was it so bad? Why did you have such a terrible time? Why did your time completely stink? I ask myself that same question quite a bit. I don't know what went wrong that race. I know that I did get lost. I know that I was so far behind that I think some of the road signs or the directional arrows had already been removed. I did totally get lost, which didn't help my time, that's for sure. But yeah, I've never been able to put my finger on why that race was so terrible. It's a very difficult course, as I've said before, and as I will say again. Out in Liberty, Missouri, there are hills, man. I mean, hills. That is the hilliest course. So later this year, you're going to hear me talk about a different half marathon. You're going to hear me talk about Hospital Hill. Hospital Hill is a very hilly course, but I think that Liberty Hospital is a hillier course than actual Hospital Hill. I know. If you're not from this area, I am totally speaking Greek to you right now. I get it. I apologize for that. But we've got a lot of hospital-themed races, I'm just now realizing. But these both take place in very different parts of town. So Liberty Hospital half of yesterday, that's in Liberty, Missouri. That is about 30 to 45 minutes north of Kansas City, Missouri. Okay, so if you can find Kansas City, Missouri on the map, you go a little farther north, you're in Liberty, Missouri. So that's where yesterday's race was. But again, exceedingly hilly. The weather wasn't much of a problem. We definitely started a little chilly. I think we started at about 35 degrees. That's not bad. I know runners historically like the lower temperatures. You're not sweating to death. You're not overheating on the course. And that's fine. I've always been one of those guys. I actually prefer it just a little warmer. I would have gladly taken a start temperature around 50. Just for me, it gets me warm. It gets me loose. I really feel like I'm running. If it's too cold, my muscles don't want to open up. They don't want to release. They don't want to get loose. They just want to be cold. And then you're starting the race, breathing in the cold air, just kind of huffing and puffing. That works your lungs. Like today, my legs, of course, are a little sore. I just ran 13.1 miles. But really, it's my rib cage and my sides, my sternum. That's where my soreness is. And again, that's just from huffing and puffing for 13 miles, all that cold air. Again, I would have liked it to have been a little warmer. But, we don't always get to choose that. And it is March in the Midwest. We could add snow. And I've certainly done this race previously where it was freezing cold. Thankfully, not a concern this time. A little cold, not freezing cold. Definitely not 2 weeks ago when we ran that 4-mile race in 17 degrees. Wasn't that at all. So we set out, we're on the course, everything's going fine. A credit to the town of Liberty, Missouri. Their people come out for the race, they show up, they volunteer, they keep the runners safe. I always appreciate it when a race has good volunteerism. That's always really important because if you don't, runners can be put at risk. If there's not people blocking cars from coming onto the raceway, someone could get hurt. And I've definitely seen close calls before. but not this race. Very well organized. The town shows up. We were kept safe. There was never a point where I worried that the cars were going to get too involved in the race. If I had a complaint about this race, and maybe some of y'all are with me on this, especially if you've run it or have run into situations like this. So there's a road we have to go down, and it's a frontage road. So, it goes right along the edge of the highway. So we're going down the frontage road. They couldn't close it. Okay, so there are cars. There's cars, both coming up from behind us and, coming the other way in front of us. So they wanted all the runners to stay within their cones. Okay, well, that makes sense. The cones were about 3 to 4 feet away from the side of the road. You could not run shoulder to shoulder with another person, and both of you fit on the amount of road that we were given to run on. It was too narrow. And if you took one step to the right, you're going down onto the gravel shoulder of the road. Those are not always the most even things. They're not always even with the side of the road. Sometimes there can be dips or gaps or crevices, divots, potholes, whatever you want to call it. So if I had one complaint, it's that we were not given enough road to properly navigate going down this, 2-mile stretch, 2 to 3 mile stretch. Man, that might even be too much. But a decent stretch of road where we didn't have a lot of room to operate. And if you tried to pass someone who was on the road, you had to leave the road, go onto this gravel shoulder to get around someone, and then try and step back onto it without catching the lip or tripping yourself up. So that part I didn't like. I'm not a big fan when there's a big group of people running shoulder to shoulder, 4 or 5 people wide. It's really hard to pass then. But when you don't have enough space for even 2 people to run next to each other, you might have squeezed the course just a little too much. That was running towards the halfway point. That was getting close to the 10-kilometer point of the race. So thankfully, it didn't last all that long. It was only a one-time thing. The rest of the course was fine. My other miniature complaint, and this is just my own mental thing, when I sign up for these races, I'm signing up to run a road course. When you take us off the road and put us onto a paved bike trail or just one of those little paths that go through a park, like in my world, that you're starting to mess with me mentally. And so mentally, after the halfway point, right at the halfway point, we got put for a little bit in a park on a paved bike course. And so we had to do that as we went around the actual Liberty Hospital structure. Usually we just run through and kind of run under this overpass at the hospital and run around the building, and that was it. This time we stayed away from the hospital and we had to do paved bike trail. I don't like paved bike trail. It takes me off my game. The road, again, narrow. We're still with the narrow problem. And then on this one, it's not that you've got an uneven shoulder. We've all seen these bike paths. The trees surrounding the paths, those roots oftentimes have grown and have pushed up the bike path or pushed up the whatever concrete type stuff they laid down. And so you've got more unevenness. You can trip on this root that is pushed up the path, and sometimes you don't see them. And a lot of times these aren't the best kept paths. Now, the one yesterday was good, but that's not always the case. And so again, we're running in uneven, narrow territory. And I don't like that. Again, personal preference, you might be fine with it. If you are, that's great. But that stuff kind of drives me nuts. But again, in the grand scheme of things, it was a really small inconvenience. That's all it was. So that was at the halfway point. The rest of the race, just a lot of hills. I know I was cruising along. There were 2 miles left in the race. I just hit mile marker 11, and I could see where we were going to finish. And I'm pointing to it right now as I sit here in my studio. I don't know why I'm pointing, but I see it. I see where we're going to finish. The problem is I'm at the top of a very large hill. Where I'm finishing is at the top of a very large hill. We're not at the same hills. There's a huge valley, a huge down that we have to go down into and then back up to where we're finishing. And I'll tell you, when you're at 11 and a half miles trying to get to mile marker 12 and you are going up another hill, at that point, my legs and my desire were just about done. It was brutal, but thankfully got up the hill. That got us back onto the campus in which this race starts, the William Jewell College campus up in Liberty, Missouri. Once we're back on campus, it was great. They take you past all the fraternity and sorority homes, and those guys, they always show up huge. The frat boys, they're out there. They'll give you a beer if you need one. Need might be a strong word, but I certainly wanted my little Dixie cup of beer as I went past them, and I enjoyed every second of it. And it was only one shot, so it was about 1 second of it. But that was enough we'll say it gave me the carbs to finish the race. But you get to finish within the football stadium of the college. You go around the track for almost 3/4 of a mile, and then you finish right there on the track, and hey, you're done with another half marathon, which is super great. The medals that they gave out at this race, oh my goodness. If you are a bling chaser like I am, or pardon my French, as we've mentioned before, a medal whore, which I am, these are the medals for you. It is easily the largest half marathon medal I've ever received, ever. And it might be the largest medal I have now in my collection. It is ginormous. And so I will show you guys tomorrow on Medal Monday over on the Instagram. Again, at Back of the Pack Podcast. Make sure you are giving us a follow on Instagram, because I'm going to have that medal displayed for you. And the picture won't do it justice on its size. It's easily bigger than any of the full marathon medals that I have. I'm taking a look. I'm looking at my wall right now, and I don't see anything even close. Yeah, you guys are in for a treat. If you didn't run this year's race, sign up for next year, because this race apparently every year just gets bigger and bigger with their finishing medals. Lastly, big thank you to the city of Liberty, Missouri, to the campus of William Jewell College, and then to all the race directors, organizers, staff, crew, volunteers of the Liberty Hospital Half Marathon. It was another very successful race. I've not seen anyone with a bad comment about it, and I don't have a bad comment about it myself. As I put in the blog report from earlier today, I give it 2 sneakers up. Maybe I need to come up with a new rating system. I don't know. You guys tell me. But I'm going with 2 sneakers up. Or we go 2 sneakers tied. No. I don't know. We'll find a good rating system, but I'm going 2 sneakers up. So a very enjoyable race, and I'm glad that I was able to go and enjoy yet another one. For me, this was half marathon number 41. And let's see, overall race, not that you guys asked, but I'm going to tell you anyway. Overall race, 194. Yeah, not bad. Not bad at all. I'll take it. Okay, so, I want to give us a little tips and tricks as we're cruising along through our early spring training schedule. So I just did a half marathon. How do you recover from a half marathon? Like, do you just sit on your butt for 2-3 weeks and not do anything? Well, no. That's actually not the best ploy. But what you really do is you do want to give your body time to rest and recover. Because as I researched this, the main phrase I heard throughout all of my research was micro tears. When you put your body through a half marathon, you suffer many, many micro tears in the muscles within your body. Of course, mostly lower half. But these micro tears, while not enough to be painful, while not enough to get your attention, they do have to be dealt with and healed, or you could risk further injury. So I just took a look, here are a few of the things that you should do after you run a half marathon. So this broke it down kind of by days, and I thought this was interesting. This is from a site called Run to the Finish. So one day after the half marathon, you get in some movement to loosen up the muscles, maybe consider a massage or put on some compression tights. And that's really all you do. Like, you don't want to do much a day after a half marathon. As for me today, day after, I've done some laundry. So I've been kind of walking around the house. I did a little cleaning. I'm just kind of moving within my home just to keep things moving around. But by way of exercise or sports or anything like that, nothing like that. Did just watch a little college basketball. So I watched other people working harder than me. 2 to 3 days after the half marathon, even still, keep movement easy. This site, they suggest doing some restorative yoga. If you're a yoga person, go ahead and get on that. This is still all about recovering. And also they cover the mental aspect of it too. So continue absorbing the race. If you're like me and like the people writing this, you don't just stop thinking about a race when you're done running it. Like, you think about your strategy during the race, you think about pre-race, you think about post-race, you think about what could you have done different. So I will share with you guys. I shared it in the blog. I'm going to share it here too. This was the fastest marathon I've run since third quarter of 2014. So this is the fastest half marathon I've done in 8 years. So I've been giving it a lot of thought. And even though it's my fastest half marathon in 8 years, I was a minute and a half. I was a flat 90 seconds over my goal. So my goal has been for 8 years to get back to under 3-hour half marathons. I ran yesterday's half marathon in 3 hours, 1 minute, 30 seconds. So I was so close to being back to where I was 8 years ago. I will be able to try again in 2 weeks as I've got another half marathon coming on. But I was definitely a little disheartened by that. And so I've been spending a lot of time thinking about it and trying to, where did I go wrong? And of course, the difficulty of the course definitely had something to do with it. Hilly course. But, what can I do for preparation? What can I do for training? What can I do to try and get that last minute and a half off? So yeah, there's definitely a lot of race absorption mentally that comes with your post-race recovery. And then of course, on the flip side of that, if you have a great race, man, celebrate it. If you have yourself a good race, let everyone know. Tell your friends and family. So 2 of my friends who I saw out there, 2 of the people who found the podcast, they both ran really good races. They went onto social media. They talked about how great of a race they ran. And I applaud that. It is not bragging. This is not you boasting about yourself. If you are running, if you are taking on the physical event or the physical, stress and strain that it puts on your body to run a half marathon and you run it well, rock it. Own that, baby. Let everybody know. And I will. I'm going to clap for you every time. So, okay, let's move on. 4 or 5 days after the race, this says to add in some light cross training if desired. But if it isn't the time for CrossFit, then wait. So, if you need a little cross training, a little CrossFit, if that's your thing, listen to your body. If it's not ready, it's going to let you know. Okay, they definitely say to start with upper body and core. Let your legs rest a little longer. So you're still getting some activity, but you're letting your legs continue to work through its issues. Again, micro tears that become serious injuries if they don't get healed up properly. And of course, as a runner, if you don't know this, I'm going to tell you now, and you will know this, or if you do know it and you're like me, you don't do enough of it, core exercises will make every runner better. You, me, elites, farther back of the pack folks, all of us, core exercises will make us better if we just do them. Do I do them? Sure. Do I do them religiously? No, definitely not. So, and then the last one, 6 to 13 days, let your body be your guide to exercise, but keep the intensity low and try not to run if you can. So I'm sure you've heard this before if you've ever done a half marathon. The overall guideline on how to rest after half marathon or full marathon, you take 1 day off for every mile you ran. So if you ran a half marathon, you ran 13 miles, they say don't run for 13 days. I'm sure that works for some. I'm sure that does not work for others. It's a guideline, but I call it kind of a loose guideline. I don't know how much stock I put into it. There have certainly been half marathons where I was running again within a week. And there have been half marathons where I was running again within 2 months. So what I think is you listen to your body more than you just follow this hard and fast rule of 1 mile equals 1 day. Don't deter from that. Don't do anything different. That's what you do. Okay. I'd say do what your body's going to allow you to do. Just make sure you're really in tune and you don't run the risk of injury, because we runners are the absolute worst when it comes to listening to our bodies about injury, because most of the time we just pretend we're not injured, even when we really are. And if you're smiling right now because that's you, yeah, I know that's you. It's me too. And if you're smirking because that's not you, you're a liar, because that's totally you. So that is what they say to do for race recovery. Half marathon race recovery. I know all that's kind of under the no duh category, but it's worth saying. So that is going to do it for this particular episode of the Back of the Pack podcast. Again, please like the episode, share the episode, tell people why you're sharing it, and help us to build this thing up. Again, last thank you to the Liberty Hospital Half Marathon for another great race. I appreciate it as always. Our next trip out is going to be on April 9th. The Rock the Parkway half marathon and 5K. I'll be running the half marathon. Hopefully I will run into some of you either at the race or at the expo, the packet pickup, shall we say. This is one of the longer tenured races around town. I think this is probably getting close to year 15, probably not quite to 15 yet, but getting close-ish to the 15-year mark. It goes up and down Ward Parkway. You almost hit the plaza. You skirt the outskirts of the plaza. But it's certainly a much easier course than the Liberty Hospital Half Marathon. So I'm hoping for myself to come in on that sub 3 hour half marathon. We'll see. You never know when the wheels are going to fall off. One of the things that gets me is this is a very flat course in some places, and sometimes flat isn't good. I don't mind going up a hill if I can go down the backside, because when I go down the backside, that's where I can make up some time. I like going down the hills. Up is not so fun, but with flat, you don't really have anything helping you, like gravity. I'm a big fan of gravity helping me get down these hills. So that's going to be the next race for the podcast. We will cover it just like we have these last two races. After that, we've got some 5Ks coming up, which are always fun. I hope you'll join us with that. You can always go to the website and see our calendar. We do have a race calendar out there of all the places we're going to be. And then keep it quiet. Well, just keep it quiet for now until it's a real thing. But we're almost done with our online shop. The online shop is almost completed. You can get merchandising, including a Back of the Pack shirt, which if I go to a race and I see somebody else wearing a Back of the Pack shirt that I did not actively give them, I'm going to go nuts. It's going to be such a glorious day. And yes, I will take a picture with you, and it will go on our Instagram page. And no, you don't get a choice. So we got fun stuff coming up. So make sure you stay a part of it. Thank you very much for listening as always. And go ahead and have another great week of training. I will see you all next weekend.
You've been listening to the Back of the Pack podcast. It is a production of OKKC Sports, hosted by Kyle Walker and edited and mastered by Katie O'Neill.